igniting community, a safe space to learn, share, and grow. Don't forget to like and subscribe below.
Hi ladies, I'm Doris Forrester and I'm back with another gender talk. This talk is going to be building on the talk from a few weeks ago on total fertility rate. Total fertility rate is the average number of babies a woman is expected to have during her lifetime. 2.1 is replacement, and there is a correlation between high fertility, economic development, and gender equality. So basically, the higher the fertility, the lower the economic development, and the lower the gender equality. The lower the fertility, we see higher economic development in that country, and we see greater gender equality. Last week, I talked about infant mortality. So that was the number of babies that died before the age of 1, and child mortality was the number of children that died before their 5th birthday. There is a correlation between high fertility and high infant mortality. This week, I'm going to talk about maternal mortality, and that is the number of women who die from pregnancy-related causes per every 1,000 live births. So this is either during pregnancy, during childbirth, or it depends on the data set you look at. 42 days after the termination of a pregnancy is what they say, but it's after childbirth up to a year. So it depends. You just have to read like the note of the data set that you're looking at to see whether it's 42 days or up to a year. And what we see is a strong correlation between total fertility rate and maternal mortality. But here, if we tackle maternal mortality, it's not necessarily going to decrease our fertility rate. But with a lower fertility rate, what we're going to see is lower maternal mortality. So there is a strong correlation. So if you look at these two maps, we have maternal mortality 2017, and we have total fertility rate. It's a projection, but it's pretty accurate for 2017. And you can see south of Algeria, Libya, and Egypt, and north of Namibia and Botswana, we see the highest maternal mortality, and we also see the highest fertility rates in that region as well. If we look at South Asia and sort of Southeast Asia, we see high maternal mortality, but we see lower fertility rates. Okay, so I'm going to focus again, like I said, on the maternal mortality and seeing what trends we can identify. So when we look at this graph, I love the scatter plot. It measures maternal mortality over fertility rates. And if we look at it by region, we can see that Africa, so many nations, and the economic development is different for these countries. We see a huge range. So we have countries that are like under 200 to countries over 1,000. So Sierra Leone and Chad have the highest maternal mortality. Niger, with the highest fertility, is an outlier. It's right over here. And what you would expect is they also have high maternal mortality, but they don't. So that tells me that either the government or NGO or some aid has come into that country to focus purely on reproductive health and getting women seeing doctors and working on ways to have them survive pregnancy and childbirth. And then if we look at Asia, we can see that most of the countries are below 400 or 300, with the exception of Afghanistan. Afghanistan has gone through a lot of instability, and so I'm not surprised to see it there. I think moving forward, we're going to see Afghanistan increase from that position in terms of maternal mortality anyway. Europe being one of the richest regions in the world, we can see that virtually, I would say that's like under 15 mothers dying for every 100,000 live births. North America, a little bit different because we have the small developing island nations, and they're not as well off, and so they have typically a little bit higher fertility, and a little bit higher maternal mortality. And Haiti is the outlier there, and they're the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere. We look at Oceania, again, some small developing island nations that are not as well off. South America, lower fertility, but still a little bit higher maternal mortality. And then we have the areas with no data. Now remember, replacement is 2.1. So countries that are under 2.1 have really, really low 2.1 fertility rate have really, really low maternal mortality. And we can see the increase as fertility increases, we can see the increase in maternal mortality. This is a good site if anyone's interested, womenstats.org. It has maps on a lot of the indicators that I've talked about and a lot of the indicators that are used to measure gender equality. The one I wanted to show you is the maternal mortality, and the only thing to note here is that the scale is incorrect. It's just a typo. That should read 31 to 100. And again, we can see the same pattern with the region, but the magnitude seems a lot worse here because of the number that's used, 300 plus. They've put them all together, and the 100 to 300. And I'm just going to look at the numbers here. So I'm just going to sort by 2000, and then you can see the 2017 number. And then what's important is looking at the relative change. So if it's negative, it means it's decreased by that percentage. If it's positive, there's been an increase by that percentage. And so Sierra Leone in 2000 had the highest maternal mortality rate, and they have brought that down by 55%. And now they are no longer in the top position. But these countries, a lot of these countries are still in the top 10. But I want to point out Rwanda. They were in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They were in 10th spot in 2000. And look at the decrease, a 79% decrease in the maternal mortality. And again, they came out of the genocide that they experienced. A lot of aid money went into that country, and they've used it well. And we can see that reflected in their gender equality index, but also in a lot of the indicators that go into gender equality. So an amazing job that they've done. Okay, and most of the countries are in Africa. Now I'm just going to flip over to 2017, and we can see South Sudan is number 1, Chad, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Somalia, a lot of African nations, but a lot of them are experiencing significant decreases, which leads me to believe that there's been a lot of money going into maternal health. Okay, all of these so far are negative. Not all countries are negative. I just wanted to point out the heavily indebted poor nations. So there's been a lot of talk on debt forgiveness for these countries, and with a 45% decrease in maternal mortality rates, suggests to me that the money that they are borrowing or the money that they are receiving is being put to good use in terms of a decrease in maternal mortality. Okay, and then we start to see other countries coming up. Rwanda, look at Rwanda now. Amazing, amazing, amazing. The other country I wanted to look at was Bangladesh. That was another one whose gender equality was increasing over time. And again, they are a country that wants to move from a low-income country to a middle-income country. And this is one of the areas that they've been working on, and they've experienced a 60% decrease. And if we looked at data prior to 2000, we would probably see an even more significant decrease in their maternal mortality. Okay, Yemen, they're experiencing a civil war, but between 2000 and 2017, they experienced 46% decrease. Venezuela, a lot of political instability there, and that equates with a 5% increase. Some of the small developing islands with their hurricanes and natural disasters that they're having to deal with, perhaps some money's being taken out of healthcare. That's what that would suggest to me. There's Jamaica with a percentage. And then we look at the countries that have low maternal mortality. I'm just going to go scroll to the end, and we can see that a lot of European nations are here. Actually, I wanted to go to Canada. I know I talk about Canada a lot, but I'm from Canada, so I'm always looking at their data. But what shocked me is that they actually experienced an increase from 9 mothers dying for every 100,000 live births to 10, which looks like, oh, it's not so bad, it's only 1, but it equates to an 11% increase, and I can't figure out in 17 years what has happened. We have universal health care. It's like unacceptable in my view, but I can't figure out what's happened to cause that. And then we look at the countries here, and the one country that shocked me was Belarus, a 91% decrease from 2000 to 2017. There's been a lot in the news about the leader of Belarus recently, and I would have never thought they would have had such a focus on decreasing maternal mortality. It wasn't high to begin with in 2000 at 22, but to go from a 22 mothers dying for every 100,000 to 2 is very significant. Well, it's a 91% drop, which is very, very significant. And I'm not surprised whatsoever that Norway has the lowest maternal mortality rate in the world because of their social programs. The next thing I wanted to look at is one of the components that would help maternal mortality rate decrease would be antenatal care coverage. So that is going to the doctor, having some health care visits during your pregnancy. And so this is, the map here is at least 4 visits. And I know myself, when I was pregnant with my 3 kids, I went to the doctor way more than 4 times for each one of them. And so to not even be going to the doctor that little is concerning. But again, you can see the area, and I think sometimes we take it for granted that gender equality is something we all strive for, but in certain parts of the world it's even a greater struggle. And we can see that again, the same part of Africa and the same part of Asia is not even having access to visiting the doctor. So I'm just going to highlight a few there. And some of the data is old, but it's the most recent data that the World Health Organization has. And I suspect it hasn't changed that much. So Somalia is at about 6%. We look at Canada, 98%. And I do think that number, that from 2006 to 2007, I don't think that number's changed that much. With universal health care, I think every woman could have more than 4 visits if she chooses. South Sudan has had some political instability, 17%. Afghanistan at 20%. And I suspect that number will decrease. And the United States at 92%. We look at France, almost 100%. Belarus, 100%, which is amazing. Amazing. Papua New Guinea, 49%. So that just gives you an indication. So this is one thing that needs to happen, is we need to increase the antenatal care coverage for females in these countries to decrease maternal mortality. That will help. And the last thing I wanted to show is this map on the share of women that are expected to die. So this is a projection. And so now it's not as bleak in Africa. So I'm just going to point out, so between 10 and 17, in the past, there would have been countries there. So if I scale back to 2000, there would have been some countries in 5 to 10. Okay, I'm just going to highlight these countries so you can see. And so as a world, the world's done a good job. Many countries have done a good job to increase healthcare and decrease maternal mortality. But if we're looking at 2017, we have a few countries that still need some assistance. There's our 4 to 5%, our 3 to 4% countries. Afghanistan's there. Our 2 to 3%, our 1 to 2. So most of Africa is between 1 and 10% of women that are expected to die from childbirth. And most of the world, actually it's not 0.1 to 1%, but most of the world is anywhere from 0 to 0.1, which is amazing. But those countries are also have a little bit more money to play with and a little bit more money so that they can invest. And as you can see, not all the countries that are highlighted right now have gender equality. It's just one little component, and it's actually it's a correlation to fertility. So one of the benefits of bringing down fertility rates for women worldwide would also be bringing down maternal mortality rates, which is a benefit for all women, right? So knowing that if you do carry a child, that the likelihood you're going to survive the pregnancy and the childbirth are a lot higher is amazing. And so maybe more women would be more likely to have 1 to 2 babies if that was the case. Not sure. Anyway, that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed today's chat. Tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but next week, I'll look at contraception and see what role it plays in fertility and gender equality. Until then, bye for now.